My name is Angela Harper, and I'm a 38-year-old nurse at St. Joseph's Medical Center. I'll never forget the date, October 8th, 2023. That was the day my life changed forever. Up until then, I was just living an ordinary life, balancing work and family. I'm married to my husband, Derek, and we have 2 wonderful kids, Olivia and James. Life was busy, but good, or so I thought. That night started like any other. I had just wrapped up a long, exhausting shift at the hospital. It had been raining all day, and the roads were slick and reflective, making it hard to see. I was tired but eager to get home to my family. I remember gripping the steering wheel, thinking about what I'd make for dinner when everything changed in an instant. Out of nowhere, I saw headlights coming straight toward me. There wasn't any time to react. 1 second I was driving, and the next, I felt the impact of the crash. I don't remember the exact moment it happened, it was all a blur. But I would later learn that the accident was severe, and by the time paramedics arrived, I was clinically dead for 7 minutes and 23 seconds. What happened during those minutes is something I can never forget, and it's a story I feel compelled to share with you today. The next thing I knew, I wasn't in my body anymore. It's hard to describe, but I felt myself floating above the scene of the crash. I could see everything so clearly. My car crumpled on the side of the road, the rain still coming down, and the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles that had arrived. I watched as the paramedics worked on my body, their movements frantic but focused. There was no pain, no fear, just a profound sense of peace that surrounded me. It was as if I was watching someone else's life unfold, even though I knew it was me lying there. One detail stands out so vividly in my mind. One of the paramedics, a young man with kind eyes, was murmuring a prayer under his breath while he worked. I could see the determination on his face as he tried to revive me. I wanted so badly to tell him it was okay, to reassure him that I wasn't in pain anymore, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't speak. I couldn't reach him. Instead, I just watched as they loaded my body into the ambulance. Everything felt so still, so peaceful. And yet I knew something much bigger was happening, something beyond anything I had ever experienced before. As I watched the paramedics drive away with my body, the scene around me began to fade. It was like the world I had always known was dissolving, and in its place, a new reality was unfolding. I was being drawn into a light, an all-encompassing, radiant light. But this wasn't just light the way we think of it. It was alive. It surrounded me completely, wrapping me in warmth and peace unlike anything I had ever felt before. Every fear, every worry, every bit of confusion melted away as I stepped deeper into its embrace, and then I heard it, a voice calling my name. Angela. The moment I heard it, my soul trembled with recognition. It was him. It was Jesus. I couldn't see his face clearly at first because the light was so bright, but I didn't need to see to know. His presence was unmistakable. It carried a love so overwhelming, so pure, that it brought me to my knees, not out of fear, but out of awe. As my eyes adjusted to the light, I began to see him more clearly. His face, I don't even know how to describe it. It was both familiar and beyond anything I could ever put into words. His eyes held an incomprehensible depth, filled with love, wisdom, and understanding. In that moment, every flaw I had, every doubt I had ever felt, every fear I carried, it was all laid bare before him. And yet, his love for me didn't waver. It didn't change. It was as if he could see all of me, the good, the bad, the broken, and still loved me completely. I felt so small in his presence, but at the same time, I felt more seen and more loved than I had ever been in my entire life. As I stood in his presence, Jesus spoke to me. His voice wasn't loud or forceful, but it carried an authority that I couldn't deny. Every word he said resonated deep within my soul. Angela, he said, I have brought you here for a purpose. What I am about to show you must be shared with my people. Many are asleep, and the deception coming is greater than they imagine." I felt the weight of his words immediately. This wasn't just about me, it was something far bigger. He was entrusting me with a message, a warning that needed to reach others. Then, he began to show me what was coming. It wasn't a vision in the way we see things on Earth. It was like I could feel the truth of it unfolding in my spirit. He revealed a future where people would be deceived into accepting the mark of the beast without even realizing it. It wouldn't appear evil or sinister at first. It would be disguised as something good, something necessary. I saw people lulled into a false sense of security, placing their trust in systems and comforts rather than in God. They were promised safety, convenience, and even prosperity, but it was all a trap. This mark wasn't just a physical symbol, it was a choice, one that would bind people spiritually to the enemy. I felt an overwhelming sadness as I saw how easily people were being led astray. They weren't evil or malicious, they were just unaware, spiritually asleep. I wanted to cry out, to warn them, but Jesus stopped me. "This is why you must return," he said. "You must warn them. You must awaken those who are unaware. Time is short, and my people must be ready." I felt the gravity of his words, the responsibility he was giving me. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was part of his plan, and I knew I couldn't refuse. My testimony was meant to prepare people, to help them see the truth and hold on to their faith, no matter what the world might promise them. As Jesus spoke, his love never wavered. Even in his warning, there was compassion, a deep desire for his people to choose him over the false promises of the world. I realized then that this wasn't just a message of caution, it was an invitation to wake up, to draw closer to him, and to trust him fully. The encounter with Jesus wasn't just about the warning, it was about transformation. Standing there in his presence, I felt something inside me shift. It was as if everything I thought I knew about love, grace, and faith was being rewritten in the light of his truth. I realized how often I had doubted myself, how I had let my flaws and mistakes weigh me down. But in that moment, I felt fully known and fully loved. Jesus didn't ignore my sins or my doubts, he saw them all. Every fear, every failure, every moment of weakness was laid bare before him. But instead of judgment, he offered me love. A love so pure and overwhelming that it brought me to tears. I had never experienced anything like it before. Through his presence, I began to understand what faith truly means. It wasn't about being perfect or following all the rules. It was about aligning my heart with his. It was about trusting him even when the world seemed to offer easier, more comfortable paths. Then he gave me a call to action, one that I couldn't ignore. "You must return," he said. "You must share what you have seen and heard. Time is short and my people need to know the truth." His words echoed in my soul. I could feel the urgency in them. This wasn't just a warning for the distant future. It was something that was already beginning. People were already being drawn away by the fleeting comforts of the world, distracted from the truth of his love and his plan. I knew then that my life could never go back to the way it was before. This wasn't just an experience. It was a calling. Jesus was entrusting me with a mission, and I couldn't turn away from it. As much as I wanted to stay in his presence, surrounded by that love and peace, I understood that he was sending me back for a reason. My story wasn't just for me, it was for everyone who needed to hear it. The next thing I remember was opening my eyes in the hospital. My vision was blurry, and I could hear muffled voices around me. Slowly, everything came into focus. My husband, Derek, was holding my hand, tears streaming down his face. The doctors and nurses stood nearby, their expressions a mix of relief and amazement. I felt disoriented at first, trying to piece together what had happened. But deep down, I knew. The experience I had, the encounter with Jesus, it wasn't a dream or a hallucination, it was real. I had been sent back for a reason, and I couldn't ignore it. As I lay there, I could see the concern in my family's eyes, and I wanted to reassure them. But more than that, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. I had been shown something extraordinary, something urgent, and I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. In the days and weeks that followed, I started sharing my story. At first, it was with close friends and family, but eventually, I realized it needed to go further. The message Jesus gave me wasn't just for me. It was for everyone. I began speaking publicly about my near-death experience, telling people about the profound love of Jesus and the warning he shared about the coming deception. I urged them to wake up, to look beyond the comforts and distractions of this world, and to align their hearts with his truth. It hasn't always been easy. There are people who doubt my story or dismiss it altogether, but I know in my heart that what I experienced was real and divinely orchestrated. I know that Jesus brought me back for a purpose, and I am committed to fulfilling it. If there's one thing I hope people take away from my story, it's this. We are living in a time when spiritual vigilance is more important than ever. The enemy's deception is subtle, but it is powerful, and it is already taking root. We need to stay close to Jesus, to trust in his love, and to prepare our hearts for the challenges ahead. My life will never be the same, and for that, I am eternally grateful. I hope this story inspires you to focus on what truly matters and to live a life filled with spiritual depth and purpose. If this message resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so others can discover this life-changing truth. And don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear it today.